The Bowles School prepares students pre-K to grade 12 for launch into college, life, and the future. A focus on innovation and tradition opens a new world of understanding, advanced learning, and opportunities. Pursue the future with confidence at bowles.org. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. Political backlash over a lavish yacht party. Women's pro soccer lands in Jacksonville. The governor's name is floated as a possible Trump cabinet pick. A city council member who raised questions about the mayor's overseas travel faces scrutiny of his own. And an ugly hit knocks the Jags quarterback out of a losing season. We'll talk about all that and more with our all-star panel on our Friday Week in Review. Then, celebrating 2 decades of chill, down-tempo, and always eclectic music on the Electro Lounge. We're joined by program host David Luckin ahead of the 20-year anniversary this weekend. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at WJCT.org or tag us on social. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
I'm from NPR News in Washington. I'm Corva Coleman. The Labor Department says there was a big jump in the number of new jobs created during November. Its latest snapshot says employers added 227,000 jobs last month. That's a huge difference from the October report, when officials initially said only 12,000 jobs were created. But that report was revised upward to show 32,000 jobs are actually created. The weak reports were blamed on hurricanes and the strike at Boeing. President-elect Trump says he'll appoint venture capitalist David Sachs to be the White House's artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency czar. NPR's Bobby Allen reports.
David Sachs is a venture capitalist associated with the so-called PayPal Mafia, a group of right-leaning technologists who helped found payment processor PayPal in the late 1990s. In recent years, Sachs has helped fundraise for Trump and attacked what he sees as woke politics on his podcast All In. Sachs is expected to oversee the dismantling of tech industry regulations. He will also give crypto advocates a direct line into the White House and work alongside Elon Musk, a close friend of Sachs. In his post on Truth Social announcing the role, Trump also said Sachs will safeguard free speech online and fight the censorship of big tech. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
No serious damage is reported from yesterday's major earthquake off the northern California coast. The quake's magnitude was 7, and it triggered a tsunami warning briefly for hundreds of miles off the California and Oregon coasts. Alexandra Cochran is with the U.S. Geological Survey.
It was located offshore, which is good news in terms of the shaking intensities, because the farther away you are from an earthquake, the less the shaking will be. However, there was still strong shaking that occurred in the local nearby areas of the cities of Eureka and Rio Dell and Fortuna. So we may see some damage from the shaking to those areas.
There are no reports of serious injuries. Syrian rebels are advancing on the major city of Hama. The rebels have already taken over Syria's second largest city, Aleppo, on their shock advance toward the capital, Damascus. Clashes have been violent. Linda Fasula reports the UN Secretary General is calling for an end to the Syrian civil war.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that tens of thousands of civilians are at risk in Syria and stressed there's an immediate need for humanitarian access. He said that the current fighting is due to a chronic collective failure of diplomacy since the civil war began in 2011 and urged a return to the UN-facilitated political process to end the bloodshed. Guterres also called on all those with influence to do their part and said he spoke Thursday with Turkey's president, who supports the rebels. Russia and Iran are allied with Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. For NPR News, Linda Fasulo in New York.
This is NPR.
And you're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. Winery and restaurant Cooper's Hawk will be opening its second Jacksonville location next week on San Jose Boulevard. Cooper's Hawk offers wine tasting, an artisan market, and, of course, a restaurant that has brunch, lunch, and dinner options, according to news partner, the Jacksonville Daily Record. Meanwhile, Sprouts Farmers Market will open its first grocery store in the St. Johns County area late next month. The store will be on County Road 210 and St. Johns Parkway and will replace the space where Earth Fare, a similar grocery concept that closed in 2022, was. The store says it will employ 83 full and part-time workers. For more information about applying, you can go to sprouts.com/careers. Flags in Florida will be flown at half-staff today in remembrance of the sailors killed and injured when a terrorist opened fire at Naval Air Station Pensacola back on December 6, 2019. In the attack, a member of the Royal Saudi Air Force who was studying at the military base killed 3 sailors and left 8 others wounded. We'll gradually have sunny skies this afternoon in Jacksonville. Highs will be in the mid-50s. Will also be breezy as well. Winds will be from the north at about 10 to 15 miles per hour. A cool night's in store for us. Lows will get down into the mid-30s with some patchy frost possible in the early morning hours. This weekend will be cool. Highs on Saturday in the low 60s, Sunday upper 60s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, political barbs continue over the cost of London flights for city leaders. The governor's rumored to be on Trump's shortlist for Secretary of Defense. Florida Power and Light passes hurricane damage costs along to customers. Tom Brady suggests quarterback Trevor Lawrence may bear some blame for an ugly hit. And the city lands its first professional soccer team. To talk about all that and more, I am joined by David Bauerlein, Metro reporter at the Florida Times-Union. Good morning, David.
Good morning, everybody.
Will Brown, race, poverty, and equity reporter at Jacksonville Today. Hi, Will.
Good morning, Ann.
Nikisha Williams, author and correspondent at Jacksonville Today. Hey, Nikisha.
Hey, good morning.
And Jack Webb, attorney and former Jacksonville City Council president. Hey, Jack, how's it going?
Good morning. Thanks for having me back.
It's good to have you. So I want to start with some questions that were raised this week about a party on Shad Khan's yacht, which is currently docked. Lovely, ostentatious somewhat, but beautiful yacht right by the Main Street Bridge. He had a party and invited some folks from the city. So it's been generating a little bit of kickback. I want to start with you, Jack Webb, since this is your stomping grounds one time. How unusual is it for city officials to get invited someplace like this luxurious yacht? What are the guidelines? What are the rules that they're supposed to follow?
It's very common. It's very common. It's to be expected. Quite honestly, I must be off the invitation list because I didn't get my text message from Paul Harden say, "Hey, Paul, give me a call, please." But in any event, it's to be expected. I mean, you got to watch yourself. But I don't really see a problem with it. I mean, it's optics. But what's interesting, Ann, is that. And David, you could speak to this. The pendulum kind of swings when it comes to the coverage of these types of issues in the media, and I think it's ripe for review and coverage now, just because of what's going on between Shad Kahn and the city with regards to the stadium renovations and things of that nature. So there's going to be a little bit of additional scrutiny. Now, with regards to the ethics violation, I think it's appropriate in some respects that these people the elected officials participate in these things because these are business partners and this is what you're supposed to do. Now, you've got to police yourself, you got to be responsible, but at the same time, I don't view it as a big issue. I think the travel is a whole other question, but as far as the Christmas party goes, kind of. It is what it is.
Yeah, and we'll get to the travel issue in a minute. But Nikisha, Jack raised the question of optics. How do you see this issue? A lot of city officials did not go. The mayor went and apparently checked beforehand to make sure that the cost of it would not exceed reporting requirements in the ethical guidelines. What's your take on how it looks and whether it matters?
It looks like people went to a party for the billionaire football owner who is building downtown. And whether you say that's kissing the ring or that's going to pay respect or that's going to show face to make sure that they stay on his radar is all about spin. But he owns the football team. The Four Seasons is under construction. We have Daly's Place. They have the new athletic field, whatever else is going to be going down there. We're about to be redoing the stadium for the team that he owns. Shad Kahn is an integral part of the Jacksonville community, yes, because of his wealth and what he's invested in, but then the city has tied themselves to him and his wealth and what he's invested in this entire idea of bringing downtown back. It's him. It's always been him. So if he says, hey, come on my yacht for a holiday party, say less, sir. So whether you want to say that's kissing the ring and it's unethical and it's, it's showing a bit of impropriety and they're making him out to be like this, Svengali godfather figure, that's your particular spin. But at this point, if we want this city to revive and be this bold new city of the South that we call it and have this vibrant downtown that's walkable with electric bikes that's on par with an Atlanta or a Charlotte or a Houston, we have to invest in the people who invest in us. And right now, that's Shad Kahn.
Will, I want to ask you about that because most of the people who responded, and we should say that it was our colleague at Action News, Ben Becker, who first reported on this and reached out to all of the council members. He didn't hear from many of them, but he did hear from some of them. And one of them in particular had a very lengthy statement as opposed to just I went or I didn't go. And that was Rockman Johnson, who represents that area. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He does not represent that area.
He's in the far southwest part of the county, like down by Ortega and.
Yeah, that's Gaffney's district.
Yeah.
But he had kind of a very lengthy response. And I was curious why you think his response was so much more formal, detailed, and why he felt compelled to do that.
Because Rockman Johnson felt compelled to do that to show that this is a ridiculous assessment. And so the length of the statement was to, okay, well, if you want a statement, here's a statement. We're going to go full Monty statement instead of, I'll give you 3 sentences. Like, we'll give you a few paragraphs of, this is what I think. Let me be transparent. I've been on, well, not this iteration of the Kismet. I was on the cheaper version of the Kismet that has since been replaced. That was the nicest experience I've ever seen in my life. I'm gonna sit here, and I was on assignment. But I'm gonna sit here and tell the truth. Like, I think that one of the details was like, oh, no shoes. Well, because the leather on the stairs is nicer than
your shoes.
Oh, without question. So,
like, if a billionaire calls you up to go on his yacht, who's saying no? Who among us is saying no?
Well, I was there on assignment, and Shad Kahn was speaking on the record about downtown development. Sure. This was a couple years ago, but the idea that this is like a really expensive holiday party, it's just the location. Like, the location is ostentatious, of course, because there's not like $1/3 of $1 billion floating around anywhere.
Like chicken wings are chicken wings, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chicken wings and shrimp, or chicken wings and shrimp.
David Bauerlein.
Well, I'd say it's some of the reporting I've done is that Shad Kahn actually wasn't at the party. So the invitation came from the Jaguars. He wasn't actually there, but the team was represented by Mark Lamping, the team president. And there were about 60 people there, guests who were invited. So it was city council members, it was people from the chamber, it was business leaders, and the Jaguars say the idea was just kind of about recognizing this partnership that the team and the city and the chamber have to promote Jacksonville during the Jaguars games in London, and they're trying to get United Kingdom businesses. So that was the context, they say, for the get together. I think of the reporting I've seen, there maybe half the city council went. That's Matt Carlucci said he counted about 7 other council members there, and the mayor was there. So the council was one portion of this bigger gathering. But the whole question is, obviously there's the one thing on the legal limits,
which is $50
right
per
$50. It's right, exactly. And if it was more than $50 per person, since council members and the mayor were able to invite a guest, then they would have been over this $100 gift limit. So if it was a big sit down dinner where roast beef and lobster and all that kind of stuff, then surely it would have gone over that limit. Now, the other part, it was just finger foods and some, beer, wine, and mixed drinks. The Jaguars are saying, well, the cost per person was less than $50. And
not if you eat at the Jaguars.
I was
going to
go there.
I want to take a call really quick here. We've got Mark on the west side. Good morning, Mark. Go ahead.
Oh, my God. I can't believe what I'm hearing with you guys. When I first read this story, I thought it was just slightly wrong that they should do that. And then when I saw that Mike Harden was involved, I knew there was corruption going on. They're stuffing themselves. God knows. How can you be an impartial steward of my taxpayer money when Shad Kahn comes, with his hand out for $5 million here, $10 million here, $1 million here? How can you be an impartial judge of that when he's your best friend and he invited you to his yacht, to his house, and took a trip with him and he gave you $1,000? That's wrong. It's corrupt, whether it was or not. It smells, it stinks to high heaven of corruption, and they should. I hate to say it. They should avoid Shad Kahn like the plague. They should not go to Jaguar games. They should not accept invitations on his yacht. I guess I was born a Boy Scout. I want my elected officials to have no sin of even the appearance of corruption. And here they are. This guy just asked for $1 billion here, sure, and we're going to reward you for all kind of perks and gifts. It's wrong, and it makes me a little mad that you guys aren't on my side and don't see this with these people.
Thanks, Mark. Jack.
Yeah, this is something, again, we grapple with on the city level all the time. I think, Keisha, you just nailed it. I mean, the reality is this is the world we live in. Now, you have to do business with Shad Kahn, with Lamping. I mean, why wouldn't you? That's your responsibility as an elected official. I'm not saying, be corrupt and take bribes, but it kind of, I remember when I was a city council president, we were getting screamed at. Because of the Jaguar tickets, because we had a box. Well, why wouldn't the city council have a box? I mean, I understand it comes out of general revenue. So when I was president, I gave all the tickets away. All right. Here's your allocation. My tickets I'm giving to charity because I don't want to be bothered with it. With the travel stuff, I didn't travel because Tia Mitchell at the time was all over me about travel. So I'm like, I'm not going to travel.
Times Union reporter.
Times Union reporter.
Very, very good reporter.
Yeah. Well, she kept me honest. I was walking a line, that's for sure. But but no, I respectfully, I understand the perception issues, but I respectfully disagree with the caller.
Well,
so 2 things. Well, first of all is, earlier this year, UNF had a poll about whether people wanted the Jags to stay in town. And a majority of people said they did. Well, part of being an NFL city is that taxpayers will spend money on an NFL facility. Mm-hmm. And the smaller the market, according to a professor at the University of Michigan I spoke with earlier this year, the more taxpayers are going to have to pay. So the Jacksonvilles, the Cincinnatis, the Indianapolises, the Nashvilles of the world, and Buffalo are going to have to pay money. The difference between Jacksonville and all those other cities is that the state government also helped the local government finance the stadium, which in Florida we do not do. Secondly, Mayor, I'm going to go to Mayor Deegan specifically. She, as by her own admission, said she's been a season ticket holder for the Jags since they got here. It's not exactly the safest thing in the world for the mayor of the city to be in the north end zone of a Jaguars game. Mm-hmm. That's the same north end zone where folks were throwing things on the field on Sunday afternoon. Mm-hmm. It would be almost irresponsible for the mayor, not her herself, but like for the mayor's safety to be in the north end zone. That's part of the rowdiest part of the stadium. So yes, it makes sense to have a box now, in part for the safety of people like the mayor, because the north end zone isn't exactly a place where you can put a mayor and their security detail on a Sunday afternoon.
Fair enough.
David Bauerlein. I mean,
I
think
think
I should just say that this is always it's a perennial issue, right? There's periodically, as Jack alludes to, there's reporting on who's in the box, who else is in the box that might be lobbying them or urging them on a project that these people do rub shoulders frequently.
They do, absolutely. And the caller's point is one perception of it, which is there's that it just doesn't look good, that there's, to have city council members and the mayor going to a party that's hosted by the Jaguars after they've received a really big, a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars is going to the stadium renovation. And then also there's the Four Seasons hotel development, which again is a big economic development deal. And there have been other deals between the Jaguars and the city. So that is the perception of it, that it just doesn't look good. And that, that because of this, there's going to be a favoritism that's going to be shown to Shad Kahn when he comes to the city. I personally don't think that's the case, and I don't think that going to this party for finger foods and a glass of wine is going to tip the scales in that way. It's part of just the political world in which people operate. And if the Jaguars had gone, and this is one question we asked some of the people who went there, had gone there and invited people there, and then stood up and said, you know what, we're about to do Project X, and we're really going to want you to support us, and use that as an opportunity to essentially lobby this audience of elected officials while they were there, then that would have been kind of crossing a line, I would think, because then you're really, you're asking people to sort of do something for us after we invited you to this nice party. That would have been an even worse optics, I think, than this.
I just want to note we have an email from Caitlin saying, why is the conversation always the Jaguars Stadium? Let's talk about how nicer stadiums bring Beyonce and Taylor Swift and the economic impacts there. I also want to take a call from Shamari in Ortega. Go ahead, Shamari.
Hey, good morning, y'all. I agree with that email that you just read off. I think that Shad and the Jaguars and all of those folks, they are our business partners. I don't know any business partners that do not communicate and that do not break bread in order to improve the relationship. And I think that's vital. And again, like the lady said in the email, the stadium isn't just about football. It is a world-class, you want it to be a world-class entertainment venue so that we can continue to generate revenue. It's a revenue mechanism. That's what it is. And I think that that the citizens are better served when the elected officials move in a capacity that represents their voice and their business interests. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Shamari. And if you're just joining us, we're talking to Will Brown, David Bauerlein, Jack Webb, Nikisha Williams about the week's top headlines. I want to move on now to talk about another issue sort of involving city officials and expenditures that are under the microscope. This is now a question of council ethics. It was initially raised by Councilmember Ron Salem, and he was concerned about the money that the mayor had spent, including some taxpayer money to go to the London game that the Jaguars were playing. And David Bauerlein, now you're reporting that this the questions are now being asked of his travel. He did not travel on the taxpayer dime, but explain to us what's at issue and what's being looked at.
So Councilmember Ron Salem has a political committee, which have become more common recently, but it's still unusual for a council member to have a committee that's raised as much money as his committee has. And the political committee can raise unlimited amounts from donors, so there's no restriction on how much the checks can be. So Ron Salem used this political committee to pay for his expenses for a trip from Jacksonville over to London in the days before the game. And it was like $12,000 that he paid to Delta in connection with the trip. And so the argument is that, well, they didn't use taxpayer dollars, and he didn't pay it out of his own pocket either. And so the money came from this political committee and people who've donated to it. And it's all legal, evidently, because when he was over there in London, he had a fundraiser, and that was the justification for using the political committee to pay for the trip. So the question would be, well, obviously you could have done the fundraiser right here in Jacksonville. Well, he did want to go to the game. He wanted to experience that while he was over there. So it's a case where taxpayer dollars weren't used, but the funding did come from political donors who could give into this committee. It's legal, and the question would be, obviously, does that mean then that if your political donors are funding a travel for you, that you are somehow beholden to them, that they have influence with you in terms of your policy making decisions and your votes? And Ron Salem was saying that it absolutely is not the case with him, that if people contribute to his political committee, they do so because they support his positions, they support his outlook, they support his governing philosophy, and for no other reason, and that it's not a sort of a quid pro quo type of thing. You donate to me, my political committee, then allows me to take this trip, and then I do something for you.
Basically, that if anybody came to him with the assumption that there was a quid pro quo, that he would not take their money. But I have a couple of quick follow-ups. I mean, one, do you have any idea why the Delta flight was $12,000? Did he travel alone? Was he?
Yeah, it was purely for his own travel expenses.
It just seems very costly.
It is, and that's a good question.
Is it that
I know
much in
that
first
you
class?
can,
That's a first class flight with lay down seats.
right.
Lay down seats.
And you can also, I don't know if this is the case or not, but you can also book a trip through airlines where you add on lodging and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an all things, but yeah, to fly a first class, it could be a pretty hefty price too, if that's the case.
Round trip.
Yeah. So Nikisha, I mean, I just wonder, he's saying it's not taxpayer money. But I don't know if observers view that necessarily as clean hands when you're saying, don't worry, taxpayers didn't pay for it, lobbyists did.
No one would care if he had not come after the mayor talking about, well, what did she do when she went to London and then to Italy? Who paid for her flight? So this political tit for tat, this is what you get. Pot, meet kettle. So if you don't want somebody in your finances digging through your numbers and in your pockets about how you fund what you do and where you go in the name of the city of Jacksonville, then maybe you shouldn't do that to the mayor of the city of Jacksonville, who, by her own admission, before there was even an investigation and a report, said that it didn't come from taxpayer money, that she funded her own vacation. And if you want to do the same thing, stop doing all this political rigmarole. There are bigger issues that need to be focused on other than who's funding what. If it's not coming out of taxpayer money and it's all completely legal because of campaign finance law and the fact that you had a fundraiser, if you didn't want all of that dug up, so now that we're spending 15, 20 minutes talking about it, when there are other things that could be discussed, like we've talked about a yacht party and we've talked about who's paying for what, it's all giving the scent of injury. It's all giving the sense of political impropriety when it's not. These things have been perfectly legal. We may not like it as taxpayers. There are other things that we can focus on. But when you do this type of political mudslinging, this is what you get.
Jack Webb.
You are absolutely correct with regards to the tit for tat on the political side of it. If you live in a glass house, don't walk around with rocks in your pockets, okay? It'll come back to bite you. But that said, I'm a little bit more critical than you are, Nikisha, on this one. Everyone assumes it's legal. I assume it's legal. Ron Salem is a very smart guy. He's a good person. He would not do anything. I'm sure he consulted counsel and got an opinion before they did this. But I got to tell you, the fundraiser in London, what? I mean, you can't do a fundraiser, here in Jacksonville. You spent if the rationale for being in London to do spending the $12,000 was to fundraiser, you could save the $12,000 and do it right here in Jacksonville. All right, let's face it. The reality was you went to London to watch the game. Right, you're going to do business over there. So how are you going to bootstrap this thing? How are you going to make it legal? Is that a subterfuge? Arguably, it is. So And again, I remember going back to Tia Mitchell when I was president of the council. We, in concert with the chamber, we executed what's called the Atlantic Way with the Republic of Ireland. Now, we took a trip to Ireland. I was supposed to go as the president. I didn't go. I sent Michael Corrigan in my place because I knew that Tia Mitchell would be all over me because I have family in that part of Ireland. So she knew I'd be over there, hanging out in pubs and stuff, drinking with the second cousins. So I made a conscious decision not to go.
And Michael at the time was your colleague.
Michael was my colleague, on the council. So Michael went. So,
and I don't disagree with you, but just because something is legal doesn't make it right. Like, I'm not saying that he was wrong, that he was right. That is not at issue here. But there are a lot of things that are legal in finance law, in elections and campaigns, in cities, in tax law, and in all these other different ways that are absolutely wrong and are disadvantageous to other communities that other people do not have access to.
I agree.
So morally, is it wrong? Is it shady? Is it dodgy? No doubt about it. But right now, we're wasting time on something that might be politically legal, and it's in terms of the criminal legal system. Like, you're not going to get someone knocking at your door because of it. But if you don't want people talking about it because you want them to focus on your issues and your thought process and how you are leading the city council, then do that for everyone on council and everyone who is in city government.
Yeah. I want to take a call from Stanley on the north side. Good morning, Stanley. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning to everybody. Yes, first of all, we have an ethics problem here. I was part of the last two charter revision, and we talked about ethics. In Jacksonville, ethics is dead. They killed it. When we talk about these issues at the present time here, we are talking about ethics. The most important thing here, city council is not business people. They're supposed to represent the citizen, not special interests. And y'all keep missing that point. I can't understand why in this city here we fail to not follow the law unless it's for the special class, the ruling class. Thank you.
Thanks, Stanley. Appreciate that. Well, it's a conversation I imagine we will continue to have and probably will have with every coming administration, because it does seem to resurface, as Jack says. I want to move on now to talk about this sort of on-again, off-again bromance between the incoming president, Donald Trump, and our governor. At one time they were very, very close. There was, this ad where Ron DeSantis was reading to his child from The Art of the Deal. Some said it was child indoctrination. I'm just saying.
Building the wall.
Yeah, there was building the wall with the blocks. So they were very much, Trump claimed that he made Ron DeSantis, and there was a very serious falling out. Political rivals. Now his name is being put on a possible, or at least floated as a thought, to replace Pete Hegseth, who's been running into all this trouble with his history. Will Brown, I'm going to just start with you on this. I mean, my big question about whether he could actually be named Secretary of Defense or be selected for that is Susie Wiles, who is the chief of staff for Donald Trump, who is a Jacksonville native, and who apparently had a really serious falling out with the former governor who she used to work for.
Yes, from the contemporary reporting, Governor DeSantis won the governor's mansion in 2018 by 33,000 votes, and winning that very close campaign, Susie Wiles was soon excommunicated. That's a strange way to express appreciation, but people move differently.
Because she sort of ran that campaign for him. She
Yes.
was his advisor at the time.
Yes, and took him from very not well-known congressman who, even by his constituents in St. Johns County, knew that he didn't always show up to things in St. Johns County, because they said that to me while he was a congressman, to the governor, and now one of the most known governors in the country. It's really fascinating what people will allow themselves to, or subject themselves to, all in the name of power. And both the incoming president and the current governor are two people who have exhibited that in a lot of different ways.
David, I'm interested in your take on that. How much do political differences like that or old animosities matter when it comes to selecting someone for a top cabinet pick like that, do you think?
Yeah, it does matter. Now, of course, DeSantis did endorse Trump after he withdrew from the presidential race, and they have had this conflicting relationship over the years. It sounds like Trump has his own interests in what he wants. He would like to have some influence over who DeSantis names to the Senate seat that is going to be vacated by Marco Rubio becoming Trump's Secretary of State. It's such a parlor game with all these moves, bump one person out, bump another one in. There's this chain reaction of positions that'll be filled as a result of this. So, there have been reports that Donald Trump would like to see Lara Trump, who is his daughter-in-law, be the senator from Florida. So,
and that decision rests with the governor.
And so DeSantis has a lot of leverage in terms of political leverage in terms of that. And if Ron DeSantis actually does want to become Secretary of the Department of Defense, then maybe there's an art of the deal that's being worked on here in terms of all the gamesmanship and horse trading that might take place. But who knows? I mean, we're getting a lot of reports from unattributed sources, and who knows if they're coming from both camps or just one camp. I think the January is when governor said he will make that Senate appointment.
Yeah, Jack Webb, there are, as David said, these are coming from unnamed sources. Reading, Politico has done a lot of reporting on this, but other news outlets have picked up and carried it as well. And it is hard to tell who could be advantaged or disadvantaged by these rumors, who, in this political gamesmanship is a winner, who is a pawn. What's your take?
Yeah, you get the story out there, and it gets re-reported 3 or 4 times, and it's suddenly true. Okay, so I think that's part of the game here. But first rule of politics, maybe the second rule is forgive but never forget. Okay, so all right, so does Donald Trump have a problem with Ron DeSantis? Well, maybe not. Probably won't remember it tomorrow. But does Susie Wiles have a problem with Ron DeSantis? Yeah, she sure does. But again, forgive, don't forget. That is, Ron, okay, you want this gig, right? You are fast approaching irrelevance, right? You need a platform to run for president. You want this gig. This is what you're going to do, all right? You're going to report. You're going to appoint Lara Trump as the senator because you don't want to do it, but you're going to do it. And then, Matt Gaetz is going to run for governor and Trump's going to endorse him and you're going to support him. And that's the way it's going to play. And so I think that's what's going on. But he's got to make the case. I think he's got to go kiss the ring. And the ring, the person wearing the ring is not necessarily Donald Trump. I think it's more Susie Wiles.
Wow. Nikisha.
As a person from a city and a state known for its corruption, known for governors going to prison, known for selling Senate seats, because that did happen under the when President Obama took office in Chicago and in the state of Illinois. They're playing a dangerous game, but go forth and conquer. As far as Governor DeSantis possibly becoming the Secretary of Defense, it's a rumor, but rumors are how Pete Hegseth has been taken down with all of his affairs and outside babies and the things.
Mm-hmm.
So until it's confirmed, it doesn't matter. But as Jack said, Governor DeSantis is about to be a lame duck governor. He is approaching irrelevance. And if he does want to revive his political career, the Trump administration would be the place to do that. But he will also face competition from the Secretary of State being Marco Rubio. Mm-hmm. And so there are bigger things to discuss.
At some point, all of these appointments that we're talking about, as if they're sort of set in stone. I think it's worth remembering that 83% of his appointments were gone by year 3 of his administration.
And they all have to be confirmed by the Senate.
Sure.
It's going to be a long 4 years.
And to your point, Ann, he's got one term. So you're playing. It's a short game here.
Yeah.
So what do you got? 2 years, and then you got 2 years. You serve in that capacity for 2 years. You're looking for something else.
It's all for a prop for whoever's going to be the Republican nominee for 2028. And like I said, even if DeSantis goes into the administration, he's still going to have competition from Marco Rubio.
Could be Pam Bondi.
But specifically in reference to the Secretary of Defense, this is something that is noteworthy for Jacksonville because we have so many military people here. We have 2 military, but we have 3 military bases within our listening audience here at WJCT. And then Jacksonville is one of the most popular places for people who either retire or separate from the military to come live and work. So, if people are deciding, I don't want to be a part of the military anymore. I'm not saying that's at all the case, but Jacksonville, there could be impact based here in Jacksonville and Northeast Florida based on who the Secretary of Defense is, because their policies may impact NAS Jax, it may impact Mayport, it may impact
Blount Island.
Yeah, Kings Bay up in Georgia. So it is something we should keep an eye on.
Sure. I want to move on now because there is another couple pieces of big sporting news that we should at least touch on. First of all, this women's pro soccer team that's coming. Will, you are a longtime sports reporter. You've covered women's soccer. You've covered soccer a lot. And so tell us what the significance of this is. I mean, we knew that this team was coming, but there's some additional announcements this week about where they're going to play and what all the team is going to look like.
So Sporting Jacksonville is a club that has, in its founding ethos, has said the men's and women's game are equal. That is something you do not see often in the soccer landscape. A lot of times soccer clubs start these men's programs or these men's teams, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we got to do something for the women too. Their women's pro team will play at UNF starting in 2025. And it's really worth noting that Jacksonville and Northeast Florida has a very long history of producing some outstanding women's soccer players. It was last week, 10 days ago, that a young woman named Carson Pickett, she's from Clay County. She won the NWSL championship with the Orlando Pride. There's a young woman named Avery Patterson who's from Jacksonville who plays professional soccer for the Houston Dash. And so there's so many young girls and young women who play soccer, and this team has been pegged as a pathway for women to see, young girls and women to see that there are opportunities for them in the global game. The club, they're going to play at UNF, as I said. UNF's women's soccer team drew, I think, 4,000 people for a game out at UNF last year, and about 3,000 for another game against Florida State or against Florida this year. So there is interest in soccer and women's soccer in Northeast Florida. And Sporting Jacks is looking to tap into that.
And they're looking to somewhat expand the Hodges Stadium at UNF and eventually get their own. I mean, they're ultimately thinking that they're going to want to appeal to 15,000 crowds of 15,000.
Yes, they have said, the club leadership has said to me specifically that they're looking to build a soccer-specific stadium that seats up to 15,000 people, and that'd be the home for their women's program and their men's program. And, frankly, if you brave the elements on a Tuesday or a Thursday night, you'll see some outstanding high school soccer in this area, and it would not surprise me in the slightest if one of those young women playing high school soccer here in Northeast Florida is suiting out for Sporting Jackson in a few years.
Mm-hmm. Nikisha, to Will's point, I mean, what is the significance that this is not like an afterthought? We're also going to have a women's team, but really starting with that, planting the flag for women's sports and women's soccer.
I think just on a national scale, women's soccer is more popular.
They're more successful.
Also more successful. But then beyond that, locally, I think it shows that there should be parity and equality within sporting clubs, and that just because a sport may have been dominated by men, that does not mean that what the women do on the field is any different or any less exciting or any less worthy of investing in. And I think that's an important message to send in Northeast Florida, in Jacksonville, but also in the sports community broadly, where there is large conversation about the differences in pay. I'm thinking specifically of basketball and how members of women's professional teams are treated when they're playing on a professional level, the same game, the same rules, and yet the perks, so to speak, or the salaries are so much different.
Jack, this team ownership group is also comprised of some very powerful people in the world of sports. Fred Taylor, Tim Tebow.
Right.
What does that firepower bring to this program, and how significant is having those names at the top of this leadership team carry things forward for the city?
Yeah, I think it's real significant. I think it. You got Tebow, you got Freddie T involved in this. It lends a lot of firepower to it. Gives a lot of street cred. And I think it's an acknowledgement as well. I mean, that it's viable. I mean, Tim Tebow, Freddie T, they wouldn't be putting their money into it, and they wouldn't be bringing other investors into it as well if it weren't viable. So I think it's great. I think it's wonderful.
And someone else who's a part of this group who doesn't get enough credit is Becky Burleigh. She coached the University of Florida women's soccer team to a national championship in, I think, '99. And at that period, the University of North Carolina was unbeatable. And she found a way to create a program that dethroned the University of North Carolina when they had some of the baddest players on the planet playing for them. So, I mean, Becky Burleigh has been...
Baddest as in best.
Oh, good. Yeah, without question. Becky Burleigh's been a towering figure in soccer for decades.
Yeah.
And she'll be here in Jacksonville.
Another sports headline, David Bauerlein, is the hit that our quarterback here in Jacksonville took, Trevor Lawrence, out for the rest of the season after a particularly hard hit from a defensive player on the Texans. But comments made by Tom Brady, who's also another well-known quarterback, former, suggest that Trevor Lawrence might bear some of the blame for this injury, or at least some of the responsibility for not avoiding the injury.
Yes, and that was kind of controversial comments to make. I think from what I understood what Tom Brady was saying, it's kind of saying more in general that, some of these quarterbacks are out there and they kind of push the envelope. There's a lot of NFL rules that protect the quarterback so that they're not getting hammered by these kind of hits, as opposed to, say, a running back just out there would probably get hammered by these type of hits. And some of the quarterbacks then are kind of take advantage of it. It's kind of like they'll do a little fake slide and then the defenders back off and then they get some extra yardage, or just kind of dance down the sideline because they know nobody's going to hit them. And so instead of like running right out of bounds, they kind of get a scoot for a few more yards. And so I think that's what Brady's talking about, which is basically that if you're going to protect the quarterback, don't let the quarterback exploit that protection to have an unfair advantage over the defender. Now, from what I saw as somebody who has never played football, but sort of a casual fan, it looked like that Houston Texans players went in and to sort of inflict some punishment on the quarterback that was not called for. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was going down, and they went in with the forearm. Again, it just reminds you that I enjoy watching football, but is it really... This is a sport where every game somebody gets injured grievously,
injury rate,
and it's a collision sport in a way that that really brings home in terms of what happened to Trevor Lawrence.
I am chomping at the bit on this one. I am just chomping at the bit. I mean, come on, we got to call out Tom Brady, dude. Give me a break, man. If Tom Brady got hit like that, this guy would be out for 2 seasons. All right. I mean, no one's going to touch Tom Brady like that. And Tom, just don't go away angry. Just go away, all right?
But the reason Tom Brady played until he was 45 is because he avoided hits like that. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence is at fault. I'm saying that, yes, he almost got knocked into the upper room. But because I was on the sideline, I was like, oh, dear. Oh, no. I mean, I saw it immediately, and I was like, okay, he might be. And then I'm photographing it, and I was like, oh, he got cracked.
Yeah.
And you got some great pictures that ran on Jacksonville Today of that moment.
Yes,
you were
and
right
I was
there.
like, oh, dear. And then, so, I mean, it was a massive hit. I mean, and to David's point, sometimes quarterbacks do exploit, like, hey, I might get a couple of these extra yards. Trevor's not someone who's done that.
He doesn't have that history, though.
No,
that's the point.
But my concern for him genuinely is, this is a second concussion in 12 months. I have a cousin of mine who played in the NFL for 6 years. And he had, at one point, he had 4 concussions in 4 months. He's 6 months younger than me. I mean, these concussions add up. And, we see these young men as young men in their 20s, sometimes their early to mid 30s, but by the time they're in their late 30s, early 40s and older, those concussions that they sustained as young men, they
Really
have a
have an
different
impact.
quality of life.
Yeah. David, I just want to move on briefly and talk about this rate hike for FPL. Now, a lot of the customers on the First Coast are JEA customers, but there's a good chunk of them that are FPL customers, particularly down in St. Johns County. And they are asking ratepayers to shoulder the burden of hurricane damage. There's obviously been a lot, and there's a lot of billions of cost that they're trying to make up. So it is perhaps a rate hike of, I don't know, $7 a month, or no, about $12 a month that people are going to see. How does that compare to what we're seeing here in JEA, and what does that tell us about the future of resiliency and the cost of storm damage?
Yeah, their rate now is going to be higher than JEA's in terms of that. And, what it says about resiliency is that when a hurricane hits one place in Florida, everybody's going to feel the pain from that because Florida Power and Light is spreading this cost among its entire customer base. And that's a reality of a hurricane season when you have that type of activity.
Yeah, well, we'll have to leave it there.
Congaree and Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
On the next Fresh Air, Werner Herzog. He goes to extremes to make films about extreme personalities, predicaments, and places. He's made movies in the Amazon jungle and a documentary about a man who lived with grizzly bears, thinking he was protecting them from poachers until he was eaten by a bear. His memoir is out in paperback. Join us
today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Florida Roundup, more than 1 out of every 5 people in Florida has health insurance through Medicare or Medicare Advantage. The deadline to sign up for the government health care insurance for older Americans or the private insurance version is this weekend. Do you rely on Medicare for your health care or Medicare Advantage? Does someone in your family? And what's the experience like? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
Police are calling it a brazen and targeted attack. On this week's Friday News Roundup, the latest is the hunt for the gunman who fatally shot United Healthcare's CEO continues. Also, President Biden pardons his son. Pete Hegseth's mom defends hers.
People need to listen to him, get to know him, not the Pete from 7 years ago, but the Pete of today.
That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome to the Electro Lounge for a Saturday night. 4 hours of nonstop music, so we've got you covered all the way till 4 a.m. with some of the best music on the planet. It's next on your community-supported public radio station.
Well, you will know that soothing voice if you listen to nighttime listening Electro Lounge on WJCT. I'm here with David Luckin. He is the creator and original host of Electro Lounge. David, what year was that from?
That we just heard was about 10 years ago because our first shows, we lost our first 700 shows after a storm. We had power surge, and the drive that had 700 shows went away. So that was about 10 years ago, but it was a nice voice. I like that voice. I listen to myself, and I sound different over the years, but 20 years ago, we started the show.
It's
December
unbelievable
7th.
that it's been 20 years. Can you?
Oh, I know. I want to say, where has the time gone? But I'm happy with what we've done for 20 years. Spotlighting fresh music. I would say 80% of the music I've always played has been new, even though no one knows it, because it's mostly down tempo and chill and
very,
stuff.
very eclectic.
And eclectic, yeah. And that's what people liked about the show is I just said 80% was new. I was never afraid to play Johnny Cash or anybody else. To me, it's just music. I just want to play nice music.
Yeah, and
any genre, but most of it's in a mellow mood because it's night and we're all crazy all day. So the whole vibe was to just create a safe little island of peace for people.
Yeah, and so this Saturday is the 20th anniversary show. How are you going to celebrate?
I'm going to play some of my favorite songs over the years and some great new music, which I usually steal from Al Pete's Neighborhood because whatever he plays is the best. So I've got a few songs that he's played.
And we should say he's on Saturday night.
And he's on Saturday nights right before me. I'm going to make sure I play Ebony because she's one of my favorite local artists. We've always tried to spotlight local artists. We've brought them in for years and had them play on the show.
And she's a kind of beautiful,
she's so good.
soulful
And we were going
R&B.
to talk, but she had such a crazy week that we're going to play 2 of her really nice songs. And then we're going to have a conversation with Courtney Lewis of the JSO the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra, because it turns out he's got the biggest band in town. He's got like 60 members in his band.
Yeah.
So I got him, and we had a nice conversation. He brought me a song, and I brought him a song. You'll have to listen to see what he brought me was really good. And then I played, well, I'll tell you what I played for him. I played for him Pavarotti and James Brown, a duet of It's a Man's World, and it's absolutely stunning. So that's a little conversation with him. And then the second hour, there's virtually no talk at all. The 10 to 11 hour, it's just some great music over the years. You got a phone call?
Yeah, I want to call.
Oh, I love it.
From Charles on the West Side. Good morning, Charles. Go ahead.
Good morning. Oh, David, I wanted to thank you for 20 great years of listening. The other night when you played Sympathique.
Right, from Pink Martini.
Right. Oh, that was a masterstroke. I love your choices. If you can ever find it out in L.A., they have what they call the eclectic lunch hour out there.
Well, morning becomes eclectic on KCRW, and it was one of my models. I definitely borrowed from them.
David, well, have you ever heard Marianne Faithfull do a version of Across the Universe by John Lennon? Because they played that out there one day, and I've never been able to find it.
No, but that's exactly the kind of music I like to play, playing songs that people know, only different versions. They're called covers. And I like to play covers because you've already got the audience involved in that song. They already know it, but this is a version. It's jazz or reggae or classical where you can take a song and turn it into something else. So I've always tried to play covers.
And, Charles is not alone. You've gotten some great tributes. I know I've been looking on your Facebook page, people who've really been moved over the years by the music that you play, that it's really helped them in some very difficult spots. But I know you also want to play some music for us, a little preview. So what's what are you going to be playing today and why?
What I thought I'd play today is a song called Stay Human by Michael Franti and Spearhead, because it is the song after 20 years that has gotten the most response. When that song plays, there's inevitably an email, a phone call, or something that says, who was that? What is that? So I thought we'd play that. We're going to play that Saturday night, too, because it's one of our most popular songs.
Well, David Luckin, congratulations on 20 years with Electro
Thank
Lounge.
you.
It's terrific having you here. And we're just going to listen to some music. It's Friday. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Starvation is a creation of the devil, a rebel. I'm bringing food to the people like a widow. Bringing flowers to a grave in the middle of the city. Isolation is a riddle. To be surrounded by a million other people, but feel alone like a tree in the desert. Dried up like the skin of a lizard, but full of color like the spots of a leopard. Drum and bass pull me in like a shepherd. Scratch my itch like a needle on a record. Full of life like a man going to Mecca. Sky high like an eagle up soaring. I speak low but I'm like a lion roaring. Baritone like a Robeson recording. I'm giving thanks for being human every morning. Because the streets are alive with the sound of boom, bap. Can I hear it once again? Boom, bap. Tell your neighbor, tell a friend, every flower got a right to be blooming. Because the streets are alive with the sound of boom, bap. Can I hear it once again? Boom, bap. Tell your neighbor, tell a friend, every box got a right to be blooming. Be resistant. The negativity, we keep it at a distance. Call for backup and I give you some assistance. Like a lifesaver deep in the ocean. Stay afloat here upon the funky motion. Rock and roll upon the waves of the seasons. Hold your breath and your underwater breathing. To be rhyming without a real reason is to claim but not to practice a religion. If television is the drug of the nation, satellite is immaculate reception. Beaming in, they can look and they can listen. So you see, don't believe in the system to legalize you or give you your freedom. You want rights? Ask them to read them. But every flower got a right to be blooming. Stay human, because the streets are alive with the sound of boom, bap. Can I hear it once again?
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
Fluoride in drinking water? Is it safe? I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only in WJCT News, 89.9 Jacksonville.
This is WJCT